When you hear the word grammar, you might think of, I don't know, dusty old rule books, right? But it's so much more than that. It's really the blueprint, the very soul of a language. And today, we're going to try and crack the code of one of the most beautiful and honestly, one of the most logical languages out there, Telugu. Okay, so when you first look at this, wow, it's ancient, it's elegant, and yeah, maybe it's a little intimidating, right? But what you're looking at isn't just pretty art. It's a system, a perfectly logical system that's been tweaked and refined for centuries to capture every little nuance of sound and meaning. It's incredible. So that begs the question, right? How is a language like this even built? I mean, how do you go from just a sound to a complex idea? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. And like anything, it all starts with the basics, the foundational building blocks. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the alphabet, the very soul of sound. Then we'll check out words and their roots, where they actually come from. After that, we'll get into the blueprint of the language, the parts of speech. And finally, we'll put it all together to see the big picture. Ready? Let's do it. Okay, first up, the soul of sound. Every single language, at its core, begins with sound. The alphabet is just, well, it's how we pin that sound down on paper. And in Telugu, that system is, and I'm not exaggerating here, both incredibly precise and just really poetic. So get this. The traditional Telugu alphabet has 56 letters. Yeah, 56. Now I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a lot. But here's the cool part. Each one of those letters represents one and only one unique sound. This gives the language this incredible phonetic precision. There's a direct link between what you see and what you say, which gets rid of all the confusion you find in, say, English. And here's where it gets really elegant. It's not just a random jumble of 56 letters. No way. The whole alphabet is built on these two pillars. You've got the vowels and you've got the consonants. And the way the ancient grammarians thought about this is just beautiful. They called the vowels the life breaths and the consonants the body. Think about that for a second. So let's talk about those vowels. These are the pure sounds, right? The ones you can make all on their own. And that name, life breaths, is so perfect because that's exactly what they do. They breathe life into the consonants, which would be totally silent without them. They're literally the life of the language. And then you have the consonants, the bodied ones. They give the sound its shape, its structure. But, and this is key, on their own, they're silent. A K sound is just potential. It needs a vowel, one of those life breaths, like ah, to actually become ka. It's this incredible partnership, and it's really the heart of the whole Telugu sound system. Okay, so you combine vowels and consonants, and what do you get? Words. We've got our building blocks of sound, so now let's see how they're used to build something bigger. And in Telugu, almost every single word has a fascinating backstory. The vocabulary in Telugu is, well, it's like a rich tapestry. It's got its own native threads, but it's also woven together with words borrowed from other languages, especially the ancient classical language of Sanskrit. This exchange has been happening for centuries, and it gives the language these amazing layers of history and meaning. So, when a word comes over from Sanskrit, it can take one of two journeys. The first path is called Tetsamamu, which basically means the same as that. Think of it as a direct loan. The word is adopted pretty much as is. The other path is Tadbhavamu, meaning born from that. These are words that started out as Sanskrit but have been totally transformed over time to fit the sounds and feel of Telugu. And this chart is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Just look at this. The Sanskrit word for wonder, which is pretty complex, softens into this more flowing Telugu word. Or look at how the formal name for the goddess Lakshmi becomes this much more common everyday version. This isn't the language getting it wrong. This is a beautiful, natural process of the language making these words completely its own. All right, so we've got sounds, we've got words. What's next? Well, we need to organize them to actually make sense, to create meaning. And that's where the grammatical blueprint comes in, what we call the parts of speech. In Telugu, they're called the parts of the language. And it's a concept you're probably already familiar with, because it's just like in English. It's a system for sorting words based on what they do in a sentence. Are they naming something, describing it, showing an action? That's what this is all about. And if you look here, the main players are pretty universal. You've got your nouns for naming things, pronouns to take their place, adjectives to describe them, verbs for all the action, and adverbs to add more detail to that action. I mean, these are the fundamental building blocks for making sentences in pretty much any language on Earth. Now, we could seriously spend all day on any one of these, but to really show you the incredible depth of Telugu grammar, let's just zoom in on one: nouns. And you might be thinking, I know what a noun is, but trust me, Telugu takes this concept to a whole other level. Because it's not just nouns. In classical Telugu grammar, there are eight different types of nouns. And that incredible level of detail allows for a kind of precision, a specificity of meaning that is just, wow, it's truly remarkable. So here's just a little taste. Of course, you have proper nouns for specific names like a person or a city. Then you have common nouns for general things like human or river. And then you've got abstract nouns for things you can't touch, like goodness or sweetness. And that's just 3 of the 8. Each one has its own specific job, which lets you make these incredibly subtle distinctions. Wow, okay, so we've gone all the way from the tiniest little sounds to these super detailed ways of classifying words. So now let's zoom out. Let's step back and look at the big picture and see how all these rules come together to create the living rhythm of the language. So let's recap our journey, right? We started with the letters, the very DNA of sound. Then we built those into words, each with its own story. And finally, we organized those words with grammar, the blueprint that gives it all meaning. And at the end of the day, this stuff isn't just theory for a textbook. I mean, look at this exam paper. Understanding this system, this elegant logic, that's the real key to mastering the language. It's how you get to fluent, beautiful expression. So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Grammar isn't just about memorizing rules. It's about seeing and appreciating the invisible architecture that holds a language together. That architecture is what gives a language like Telugu its unique character, its amazing logic, and really, its soul. And that kind of leaves me with a question for you. Every language has a system like this, working just beneath the surface. So what about your language? What piece of its grammar do you find the most fascinating? Really think about it.